Hello, friends. So it's been a few days since I was here. I actually just got back from a conference up at Penn State. Um, it was an unusual thing for me because it wasn't a conference of mine. I do a lot of tech conferences for what I do, teaching literature and using technology, high-end stuff like virtual reality and augmented reality and stuff like that. In this particular conference, I was a support to our nursing department. Um, because I oversee our online learning. And if you want to go to a fun conference, go with a bunch of nurses. Now, I could not be a nurse to save anybody's life because the only butts I've ever wiped belong to the humans that birthed through this body. So, and those are all the only butts that I will, well, barring parents and spouses and lovers and whatnot, right? So anyway, we had some really great discussions, and nurses are just great to talk to. Like they just bond so quickly, and for an energetic person like me, the kind of energy that I love being around nurses because they're just such awesome people. Even if they're not spiritual or religious, they're just awesome people. So we were sitting around and we were talking about like if you want to know what's going on in TV shows, the nurses are the ones to ask about that because they know all this stuff. And I don't actually watch TV. I watch movies, and I like documentaries. I like foreign films, but I'm not too much of a TV watcher. So we were talking about stuff, and then the nurses that didn't know me, which is like almost all of them because I'm not a nurse, and I've never been to one of their conferences before. We were talking about the hikers that stay in my yard. So for those of you who are not familiar, I live on the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania, in the hardest part of Pennsylvania. And I let through hikers who are hiking from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia stay in my yard for free. They can shower, do laundry. They camp for free. I don't charge specifically on purpose. I feel like there should be some sort of spiritual energy out in the world that says like there's somebody helping you and there's nothing expected in return. And that's such an important concept to me. It is exactly why I live in the house that I live, where I live. It's why I moved here. So so they were talking like, well, don't you know their names? I'm like, I honestly don't, right? Like I don't really know anything about them. I've been here 3 years, going on 4, pretty soon now. And like the trail is big, but it's small, so you get to know people really, really well. It's a tight-knit community year after year. You get to know people, and I'm kind of a secret. Like you have to know about me. I also like that secrecy. There's an app that we use. It used to be called Gut Hook, and now it's called Far Out. And you have to know that I'm here to know that I'm here. And a lot of people don't know that I'm here, and that's quite all right. We've been here 3 years, and we had our 500th hiker this summer. So it was exciting. So we were talking about that, and they were talking about the Kardashians, which, listen, I know nothing about, but we were talking about famous people in general, and I am not really drawn in by famous people. While I think all creative pursuits are amazing, I don't think that being creative necessarily makes you wise. So I don't think that when an actor speaks that he, she, or they has any special insight or special wisdom just because they know how to memorize lines or they know how to use a paintbrush doesn't give them special talents and skills. So I don't know why we look to famous people for wise, sage advice. They're famous. That doesn't make them wise. So we were talking about that, and we were talking about different actors and stuff. And they asked me like, well, who do you think, is like a spiritual person? Like, who would you hike with? I think was the specific question. And because I talk a lot about it, I like to hike alone. I run a hiking group for people over 40 who are new to backpacking, hiking, paddling, things like that. But for myself, I like to hike alone. I have 1 or 2 women that I hike with that I like to hike with that hike my style. One is deaf. She watches the channel, so she knows who she is. And then my other hiking partner, Nav, she also watches this channel of the few. So I like hiking with them because we have a very similar hiking style. And TNT, man, she sees way more than I'll ever see in the forest. I mean, her background's veterinarian science, but she also sees more than I see. anyway, so we're talking about famous people, and I thought about that, and I thought, who would I like to hike with, famous? So I'm like, living or dead. I'm like aside from Jesus, like Muhammad, like that. And they're like, no, like a living actor that we would have heard of. So I was thinking about that. And I've only ever known two famous people, and one doesn't really count. I went to college with Steve Burns from Blue's Clues, and I was there when he decided that he was going to take a year off from school to go on this, I think they call it a cow call or something. And then he auditioned for Blue's Clues, and you know what happened to him. He was a nice guy before Blue's Clues, and the few times I saw him post Blue's Clues, he's still a nice guy. So I don't think he counts as a famous person. But the other famous person that I encountered was when I was in college. I was a piper in residence and an intern at the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival. This is back in the 90s, so like, the last century. And there was an actor, I think he played Macbeth. I think he was Macbeth. And he was a daytime soap star. I can't remember. I think his name was James Kyberd. I think that's who he was. I didn't know him because I don't watch soaps. And I was an intern in the box office, right? So I was an English major, and I was the piping. I was the resident piper for Macbeth, and we would. This is back in the olden days, like we had those slidey things, right, for the visas, like you would. I'm old, so. It would be dead during the day. So the other girl that was an intern, she and I would sit in the window of the box office because tickets were still on paper, ladies and gents. Like this is a long time ago. So we would sit there, and one day this like hot mess of a cranky man came up to the window and just started like spewing stuff at me, and I am Scottish, so you're not coming at me like that. I don't care who you are. So he came up and he was like shouting at me, and I just listened. And when he was done, he's like, well, you're not moving. And I said, no, you're right, I'm not. And he said, well, don't you know who I am? And I did my usual, like, are you the man who cured cancer? And he got all over. He goes, well, I'm James Kyberd. And I'm like, that's nice. And he said, well, I'm, don't you know who I am? And of course I knew who he was. Everybody was all a buzz about it. We all lived on campus, and, all the students and the interns, we all lived on campus. I knew who he was, but I wasn't going to let him know that because he was being an asshole. So you're going to be an asshole to me, I'm going to be an asshole to you. So, I didn't care that he was famous because he was a jerk. And I don't care who you are, whether you're famous or not. You don't get to be a jerk. I don't care if you think I'm a peon intern. I don't care. Like, you're a jerk. So eventually I got him his tickets or whatever it is he needed, but he was so pissed off at me. And like, then he would like stalk me. Like he would like look at me all evil, and I would just, roll my eyes. I was skinny and tiny back then. I could fit in a window. Obviously couldn't do that now, but like I don't care. Like, you better have a good heart. His wife was absolutely lovely. She swam with dolphins, which is totally on my bucket list of things to do in life, because dolphins are way smarter than humans. And I would like to just go tell them that, like, listen, a human understands that you are all way more smart than we are. But she was really nice. So, the season goes, and then we would always go to this place called the Spring Valley Inn for after the performance was over each night. And when the show closed, we had like a cast party or whatever. And my mom's best friend and her daughters, they were all huge, huge fans of whatever soap he was on. I think it was All My Children. I think so. And they were huge fans of his. And they had come to see the show and to see, they weren't there to see me. I know that. They were there to see him. And they all wanted autographs. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to have to go ask this man for an autograph. And I think he's an asshole. So I suck it up because, this is like my mom's best friend and her children. So I go up and I'm like, he was signing autographs for the rest of the interns. And he's like, I can't believe you want one for me. I'm like, actually, I don't. I don't want one, but my mother's best friend does, and her daughters do, and my love for them exceeds my dislike of you. And he kind of smirked, and we actually started laughing. And then, like, he was like, I was really a jerk that day. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you kind of were. And we kind of like talked, and then because I think because his wife liked me too, like, we ended up on good terms. And so, but anyway, I tell you that story to say that I don't hold stock in famous people because I don't think that being on TV or being a rock star or being a painter, I don't think that makes you smarter than other people. It means you can memorize lines. And I've directed college theater, and I studied theater very briefly because I wanted to be a speechwriter. Especially filmed stuff, you're learning little bits of lines. At theater, you actually have to remember the lines for a long time because you have to remember the whole show. And so I have a little bit more respect for that kind of acting. But again, no judgment, because I'm not an actor, and I'm not really impressed by people who are famous. So when the nurses were asking me this, I'm like, well, I don't know that I'd hike with anybody. I don't actually know any of them all that well. But then I remembered that way back when I was a missionary teacher and I taught high school, I teach Beowulf. I don't teach it as much anymore, but when I was actively teaching most of the time, I taught Beowulf every year, and there was this rendition of Beowulf that was just awful. It was terrible. It was terrible. And one of the actors in it was Gerard Butler. I think he goes by Gerry Butler. And he was a good actor, but the script it sucked. But what it did do was I would ask questions off of that movie, because then I knew my students didn't read the actual text, because they weren't the same, as is always the case with good literature and bad movies. So I had remembered that I had seen him in another thing, and then I kind of looked him up because I was interested. He did, can't remember the name of it, something Citizen, and it was really good. Like, that was a really good, and he was a good actor. It's just he was in that horrible, it was a horrible script. That wasn't his fault. For the Beowulf thing, and then he was in the Citizen movie, and that was really good, very thought-provoking, and I had used that in another class that I was teaching, and I thought, well, he's pretty interesting, so I looked him up, and I thought, he was pretty interesting, and but again, not impressed by famous people. So I don't know why I knew this, but he had done an interview that I watched. I think I watched it as part of something that I was taking part of, and it was an interview where he was talking about spirituality and how you can reach people in your dreams. And I believe that too. I believe that you can reach out to other living beings in your dreams. And I thought, and he had mentioned some writers, and I thought that was interesting. And actually showed a little depth to this guy. I mean, I didn't know much about his history. I've since learned that I think he was in law school, and like right at the brink, he was like, screw this, I don't want to do this, and went off to do acting. And he was a little older when he started acting. And so I had some mad respect for that, because, law school's hard, and to go through all that and to be like, like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't want to spend my life being an asshole. Major props to him. So he was in some other things, and then I had read that he had been in an attack, like a shark attack, or he almost drowned or something. And he had done some interviews about some spiritual work, and the kind of spiritual work that I do too, and healing and stuff. Now he goes to all those expensive things that like normal, regular, poor people can't go to, in great places like India and, I don't know, like Virgin Islands or wherever the hell he goes, So, clearly not meant for poor professors like me. But I think his energy is in the right place. So to answer their question, I'm like, well, that guy from, and I couldn't remember if it was 300 or 600 or 500. I don't remember the name of the movie. But then I Googled it and I looked up some movies that he was in. I'm like, that guy. Like, I think that guy, if I could pick a famous person to hike with, that would be the guy that I would hike with, because I think we would have interesting conversations. And I think he gets spirituality in ways that I don't see other actors talking about. I think maybe Oprah maybe gets it, maybe. I think she's spiritual. But I think like, from the brief things that I saw, I feel like he and I are probably on the same sort of trajectory, healing, Reiki, things like that. And so if I could pick a famous person, I would pick, plus he's Scottish and I play the pipes. So even if I thought he was an asshole, I could just play my pipes and then I wouldn't have to listen to him. But I don't think he's an asshole. I think from what I've seen about him, I think he's probably a decent dude. They're the tabloids are like, he's a skirt chaser. I don't care. Of course he is. He's like a rich dude. That's like a good-looking rich dude. Of course he's chasing skirts. Who cares? That's his business. I mean, is he causing harm and doing harm? I don't care. What he does in his private life, makes no difference. I think our obsession with what famous people do in their private lives is ridiculous. we should worry about what we do in our own lives. And I realize that it's sort of this projection of like, because it's external to ourselves. And so, we can pay attention to that and feel included. I have no need for that. But it was an interesting discussion. Of course, I had to show them pictures because they didn't know who I was talking about. Because they don't watch the kinds of movies that I watch, apparently. I don't even watch the kind of movies I watch. I have a 20-year-old son who makes me watch mafia movies all the time. And made me watch all these horror movies. I don't like horror movies. I don't like negative energy, so I don't like that crap in my house or in my mind. But if I had to pick, I would pick him. And maybe I have a feeling that Keanu Reeves is probably an actor that has some sort of... I don't know if he's on the same spiritual link, but I think he does do like reflection and stuff that goes with the martial arts. I think the people who do martial arts often have a reflective piece. But I would still pick Gerry Butler. I think if I pick somebody. So who would you pick? Who would your famous person be? And they told me I couldn't pick Jesus. Or any queens. They're like, don't be picking royalty. Like, I actually wouldn't walk with the queen. I don't know what I would say. I wouldn't know all the rules. And I would want somebody who is real, that could actually walk and hike, and likes nature and appreciates nature and could just sit in the middle of a forest and just be as content. I think the risk you run with famous people is that they always want to be in the Four Seasons and the Virgin Islands and all this crap that doesn't impress me at all. But I think from my limited exposure to famous people, the one I think that could just hang like on the AT in a shelter, cooking water in a jet boil and eating like ramen, I think that probably is Gerry Butler. But it doesn't matter because those people live in a whole other universe than the rest of us. So I will just hang out with the nameless hikers that come through my yard, and the people that I love on the AT. I will stick with them, because in my heart, they are the wise ones, right? They're out doing it. They're out living it. So wishing all of you all the very best in light and love. And I hope you have an awesome weekend. And I was out shopping, so I have a nice little haul to show you. My favorite piece I will show you is, I went to Penn State, and I always put in crystal shops because I like crystals. And I don't know if they do anything healing-wise, but I like them. I like to have them around. And and like Spirit put me towards not just one, but 2, 3 stores that were run by witches. Now, as you know, I'm not a witch. I'm a druid, and that's different. But I was in the one witch shop, and the lovely lady who was there, I mean, they had great stuff, potions and stuff that that I don't do, but great crystals, just great energy, great person, great shop, great person. And then there had this horrible construction going on out front. And there was the woman across the street who had a shop who you couldn't get to the shop because of this awful construction. She was in the shop, and I had said to her, well, I'm actually not a witch. I'm a druid. And she's like, I'm a druid too. And she actually went through the Bard course. And so it's just amazing that Spirit was like, here's some people that speak your language. And I've actually never met another druid in the wild that I didn't already know was a druid. So I don't know if she belongs to a grove or not. I explained that I'm independent and I don't belong to a grove, but it was really cool. And then today, we have a policy when we travel, which we do a lot of traveling. I will not eat at a chain restaurant. I want to eat local. I want to eat, I want to eat from restaurants that are local, so that the money goes to people who need it. And we found this awesome place called the Kitchen Witch in Howard, Pennsylvania, and it was just tremendous. It was a really great experience. Great food, tiny little shop, hand-carved candles by the owner's son, just great vibe, great place. And so one of the things I got was this little guy, and I believe it is a magic wand. Since I don't do magic, I don't have any idea how magic wands work or what they do, and I'm not going to use that for that purpose. But it's the Green Man, and the Green Man comes in usually either smiling, like this ridiculous smile, or serious face like this. And I just really liked it, and I was like, I can't leave him here in this store. He needs to come home with me and sit near me while I'm at the computer. So anyway, I have more of Witchy Halls and Witchy Hall, and I will show you all those things in the next video. So I am wishing you all the best and light and love. Have a great weekend. Peace. Bye.